Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Beyond Vizcaya. My name is Odine, and I'll be your host for today. For those of you that don't know, Beyond Vizcaya is a community storytelling project that tells the stories of those that live or grew up in Miami. We center those stories around three major themes. They include labor, migration, and cultural identity. Now, today we'll be talking about urban farming as well as its legacy here at Vizcaya, and we'll also hear a personal story from a farmer here in Miami. Before we get into that, I do want to let you know that we are streaming from Vizcaya's Kitchen. To connect that with urban farming, we want to let you know that during time, food would have been gathered, produce would have been gathered, and then brought here to the kitchen and would have been prepared to help sustain staff life. All right, now to our first guest, I do want to let you all know we have with us our very own horticulture manager, Ian Simpkins, and I'll just go right on into it and introduce Ian to you all. Thank you so much, Ian, for joining us.
Hi, Aldine. Thanks for having me.
Yes. All right, and so we just want to go right in. We know that you have a lot of knowledge about the history of Vizcaya's village. And to our first question, we would like to ask you what is known as it pertains to farming and its place and importance here at Vizcaya?
Well, farming was of critical importance here at Vizcaya. It was really designed as a self-sufficient estate. And that is modeled after villas in Italy during the time that Vizcaya was meant to emulate. And the reasons for that are many, but Vizcaya was created in a place where there weren't really a lot of resources available at that time, and that was Miami in the early 20th century. And care was made to purchase a large piece of property so that Vizcaya could grow fruits, vegetables, have livestock, have room for grazing cattle, and so on. And they produced enough vegetables and other produce to not only feed Mr. Deering and his guests and family and other people who worked at Vizcaya, but they also produced more than they needed, and so they would provide fruits and vegetables to nearby friends. They would provide eggs and milk as well. And they also had a sort of farmer's market at the time where they would sell some of their excess produce, some of their eggs, and so on. So it was a pretty productive piece of land. And it occurred at a time when farming really was beginning to ramp up in what was then Dade County. So it was of critical importance to Vizcaya and really played a very prominent role in its history.
And that, all right, and as we saw in that last photo, I did see someone sort of tending to the land. Can you kind of maybe tell us what that whole system was in terms of caring for the land?
Well, we're not 100% sure. All of many of the photos that we have of the farming area of the Vizcaya Village featured one or two workers who were photographed tending the land, as it were. But we're not sure if the farming area was tended to by hand or if it was tended to via mechanized means. Mr. Deering was the vice president of International Harvester, which was an agricultural machinery company and really kind of revolutionized the way farming was done in the United States and across the world. So it seems logical that they would have used some sort of mechanized farming in the Vizcaya Village to some degree, but we don't have any records of them using machinery. We don't have any photographs of them using machinery. And the photographs that we do have as I mentioned, have individuals staged in the process of farming the Vizcaya Village. And in some photographs, we see small little piles of weeds at the ends of each row, which would indicate that those rows were tended to by hand. But as far as a definitive method that was used, we're not really sure.
Okay. Do we know maybe specifically what some of the produce, you mentioned, lots of fruits and vegetables. Can you
Mhm.
share?
Yeah, we do have a list. There is a document that was created in the late 1920s. It was sort of a gardener's diary, if you will, and it detailed some of the day-to-day horticultural and agricultural activities that happened in the Vizcaya Village. And there were things farmed such as sweet potatoes, corn, potatoes. Um, Kohlrabi was something that was farmed, which even today isn't a very common crop. Cabbage, tomatoes, lettuce, a lot of your standard crops were farmed here, and they also had a lot of floral crops that were grown here as well, such as cannas, lilies, and other things. And those were farmed for the specific purpose of having cut flowers inside the house. And we do have photographs of the interiors of the house at the time when Mr. Deering lived there that showed some cut floral arrangements. So, in addition to that, they also had an orchard which featured a lot of tropical fruits such as oranges, sapodilla, mangoes, and so forth. And we do have a couple of maps that show where these trees were planted. And something interesting to note is that we do have evidence that David Fairchild was active in some of the selections of fruit trees here at the Vizcaya Village, in addition to some ornamental crops as well. And for those of you who don't know, David Fairchild was really one of the preeminent botanists of the early 20th century, and explored the world looking for new crops and new varieties of crops. While he was working for the USDA, and Fairchild Tropical Botanical Garden is named after him as well. So it was a fairly wide variety of crops that were farmed here.
Well, indeed. And then what about now? What could we find over there at the village? What type
Well,
of?
we have a small kitchen garden that we are using to test urban farming here at Vizcaya. And right now, we are coming to the end of the growing season. So you won't see as many vegetables grown as you would in, say, January, but we do have a wide variety of herbs. We do have some more summer hardy vegetables. There's some Cuban oregano right there. And we do have some more summer hardy vegetables like kale that are growing there as well. There's some lemongrass. So we're really testing it, and we've been testing it for the past few years, understanding of what's going to grow here and what isn't going to grow here under the current labor constraints and things that we have, because we obviously don't have a huge piece of property anymore with which we can farm, and we don't have a large staff that we can use to farm either. But we have a few interesting things that we're growing right now.
Right, right. And then we started this program just talking about how, Vizcaya has this legacy of urban farming. You
Hmm.
mentioned how even during Deering's time, they produced so much they were able to share with the community. And then even right now, what we have been growing here on site, it's been great to have times of harvest where, today as staff, we're still able to enjoy some of that. And then also, you mentioned having the farmers market. You worked with the vendor for that. Can you kind of
Right.
tell us, the different items that would probably be out there at the farmers market?
Sure. Well, we're really thrilled to be able to work with Urban Oasis Project, who is one of the preeminent nonprofits in Miami that deals with food insecurity and so on. Also, has farmers markets throughout the Miami area. And one of the things that we really like about Urban Oasis Project in working with them is they have a great farmers market model. And not only will you find a wide variety of South Florida grown fruits and vegetables like mamey and burro bananas and a wide variety of greens and some other things. They also partner with other farmers, such as Imagine Farms, which is here in Miami and nearby where I live. They're located in Little Haiti, and they work with those who are underprivileged to help them learn agricultural skills. And they also participate in the SNAP program. So they have a kind of well-established way for those who can't afford to purchase fresh fruits and vegetables to be able to do so on an assisted basis. And they are one of several nonprofits, Health in the Hood included, who creates urban gardens in parts of the city that are either food deserts or disadvantaged or so on, which is a really important way to get fruits and vegetables to those who need it the most. So not only will you have fruits and vegetables at the farmers market, but you'll also have a wide variety of prepared goods. We have a couple of different kombucha vendors. We have a vendor who sells really wonderful ceviche. I can speak about that personally, and baked goods and so on and so forth. We even have a vendor who creates really delicious smoothies with the power of a bicycle. So it's a wide variety of stuff that you will find at the farmers market, and it's a really interesting and fun time. And the farmers market here at Vizcaya is every Sunday, and it is from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. And we're pleased to announce that it will be running through the summer as well. So we'll have a year-round farmers market.
Nice, nice. Thank you so much for that information and just all of the background as well as it relates to
Certainly.
Vizcaya and the history for farming. Um, and to our viewers, we do want you to enjoy a few of those archival photos, a few more of them, like the ones that we shared before. And so we'll go ahead and transition into that. Thanks again, Ian. All right. Welcome back, even though that was a really quick break. So we just got done speaking with Ian, our horticulture manager. He gave us a little bit of background in terms of the history behind farming at Vizcaya. And now we actually want to introduce some of the initiatives in depth today that we engage in. And we have with us our learning and school programs manager, Diana Pena, with us to kind of give us some more information on that. Welcome, Diana.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yes, yes. All right, and so we're actually going to go right into our first question. If you can kind of share with us, what are some of the initiatives currently that we engage in at this institution?
Sure. So we've been using Vizcaya's agricultural legacy and history as a springboard to talk urban farming with different audiences, primarily with school-age children through school programs, with families through our family programs, and with the community at large, which in that part is primarily adults through community programming. When it comes to family and community programs, we've been doing programs that are open to the public and people buy their tickets or pre-register online. And we've been focusing on specific topics. So with families, we're talking a lot about our relationship with food and breaking bread together. We know that lately families do not have the habit of sitting down around the dining table as much as before to have conversations and share quality time together, and also reflect where food comes from. And with adults, we're focusing a little bit more on food sources, but also food equality and quality. You would be surprised, but a lot of people do not know where the food they eat comes from, and they do not know that Miami, for example, is one of the cities in the nation that has multiple food deserts or neighborhoods where people do not have access to fresh food in their area, in their vicinity. For school-age children, which I dare say is our biggest program and initiative so far, we go a little bit more in depth with teacher workshops and school programs that are done at the village across the street, which is currently closed to the public except for the farmers market Ian was talking about. And we go a little bit more in depth with where our food comes from, how it is produced, how to make healthy choices, and how to change our environmental impact depending on the food sources we choose. So we do all of this through hands-on activities, and we are at the same time targeting concepts such as mathematics and geography and botany and biology. So one example, one of the activities that kids do when they're here is mapping different foods that we currently find in our supermarkets to their typical place of origin, right? So they understand how far an apple travels to make it to the table, or how far a banana could travel from your garden in Florida to your table. And we have this type of essential conversations about choosing things that are local and seasonal, and how we can change the footprint of our food with our choices.
Okay, so definitely a lot of work happening, a lot of great work. Um, and my question for you, what are some of the challenges that are associated with doing this type of work?
Well, I mentioned one a couple of seconds ago. A lot of people do not know where food comes from. And when you talk to a lot of the children and you ask them things like, where do strawberries come from, or where do peanuts grow? They have no clarity where, as in the region that they are grown, or the weather, or the climate that they grow in. They don't know clearly what type of plant they're grown from. For example, peanuts grow underground, and some people think they grow on trees. And that is critical, because if we don't know what we're eating and where food comes from, how do we make healthy choices, right? Also, there's a lot of greenwashing out there, in not only in the industry but in communication with people. A lot of people do not know the use of pesticides or chemicals or seasonality, and there's a lot of use and misuse of the words organic and natural. And it is very difficult to make good, healthy choices and buy local and buy seasonal if you do not know exactly where your food is coming from. And finally, and I think the most important one, is that we are all very unaware of the inequalities related to food quality and food access. There's a lot of neighborhoods where there's no store in walking distance that you can go buy a fresh piece of fruit or vegetable. And that is huge in terms of social equality, but also environmental impact in the large scale.
Okay. And I know that with the capacity that you engage with working with school programs and the community, it seems as if maybe you may not have that opportunity to always follow up or maybe maintain a relationship. But do you have any personal stories where, as a result of this education, you've witnessed or you've seen the impacts, you've seen the growth?
Yes, definitely. And some of them, or most of them, are immediate. Right now, during the pandemic, we couldn't welcome a lot of groups, but we did start a partnership with a local organization in Coconut Grove called the Barnyard that does after school programs. And I've been going to their site to do some urban farming activities. And we went from having kids not having seen a radish in person to eating tomatoes and carrots fresh off the ground. To me, that's a win. During our regular school programs, we have a little activity in which kids dissect and observe the different parts of a plant, all with edible plants. So carrots for roots and broccoli for flowers and so on. And I've had teachers telling me that their kids wouldn't eat anything green at school, but here they're asking me if they can eat peppers and the raw broccoli after the activity. So just that to me, it's already a win. Exposure, awareness, and knowledge. On a bigger scale, at least for Vizcaya, and on a personal level as a professional, our urban farming school program did win the 2019 AAM EdCom Award for innovation in museum education. And to us, that is a great compliment in the field, because that means we're doing something good and we're discussing very critical and important topics that are relevant to the community through museum education. And that is huge for us.
Right. Yes, indeed. And celebrating with you the award that was won.
Thank you.
And before we wrap up that segment, I just want to just give you that opportunity for maybe those that are thinking about maybe engaging with Vizcaya for these types of initiatives, any information, anything you want them to know.
Definitely. So if you want to come to a community or family program, go to our website and check under calendar and you will see them. But most importantly, it's a call to action, visit the farmers market, because having farmers market is a way not to just sell delicious produce and goods, but to meet the farmers and the people that grow your food, to ask questions and to also make your community stronger. When you're buying local, you're helping local growers that are surviving on selling their produce. And you're also buying seasonal and organic for the most part. So definitely going to farmers market, besides being super cool, makes your community stronger and makes you eat healthier as well.
Right. Yes, definitely. Okay. And before we go to our next segment, there is a question that just came in. I'd love to learn more about Vizcaya's plants, gardening, and the history. Where can I find more information?
Well, our website is a perfect place to start. I would say just peruse our website. We have plenty of web stories where you can find different information, not only on urban farming and gardening, but the gardens in general and the history of the construction. We also have volunteering opportunities where most likely you're going to be working in the gardens, and that will get you in touch with our staff members that work directly with the plants. And finally, you can also contact us by email, and you can send any questions. We're happy to answer them by email.
All right. Thank you, Diana, for the time and the information. All right. And we are about to introduce our very special and last guest. But before we do that, I just kind of want to give you a little bit of background because we are going to share with you a slideshow. So when we return, we'll speak with Asha Walker, and she's founder of Health in the Hood, which is a nonprofit that builds vegetable gardens in underserved areas. So you don't want to miss this, and we'll go ahead and make that introduction when we get back.
What if this was the only grocery store in your neighborhood? And what if your only options for groceries lived on a shelf for years before they ever made it into your cabinets? Well, then you might be one of the 23 million Americans who live in a food desert. Food deserts are an issue of food injustice and a broken food system. Sustainable urban agriculture. It is a long way of saying growing our own food forever.
All right, welcome back. And as stated, we want to go ahead and go right into our introduction. We have with us today Asha Walker. Asha, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yes, and thank you for being with us. We actually, just want to go right straight into our very first question. For you, why did you start Health in the Hood?
I love that question. First, thank you for having me, Diana. It's so good to see you. I've gotten to work with Diana for so many years, and all the work Vizcaya does is so honorable and historic. So just really glad to be in this space. I started Health in the Hood because I was angry. I saw a huge gap in our food system. I was raised by an urban gardener, so I always knew you could plant food in urban neighborhoods and produce beautiful vegetables. Living in South Florida, we can do that just about year round. And the injustice of driving from my office in Brickell to my house in Edgewater at the time. I drove through neighborhoods where people could get their hands on kale and lettuce and all different types of greens, vegetables. And in the same 3-mile radius, I would drive through a neighborhood where you couldn't get an apple or anything green because you don't have a car, you don't have transportation, and you don't necessarily know that Chef Boyardee is directly related to diet-related diseases. So the injustice was too much to turn a blind eye to.
Right. Yeah, definitely. And you also mentioned that you were raised by an urban farmer. So is this sort of like a family legacy that you have going?
Yeah, well, my father, I call him the OG. He is a historian of Black Florida history. His name is Dr. Marvin Dunn. But he also, as a side family project, was a community leader and started urban farms in Overtown. So I did my bat mitzvah service project in a Miami Overtown urban farm. So it just was ingrained in me that that was a really simple solution to a big problem.
Okay. And then we kind of want to go into maybe the beginnings of the program. One of the questions I have here, the process in terms of starting, what was that like? To actually start putting your foot in and doing all that work?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, being local makes a big difference. So being able to navigate and really knowing my community was a big help. In my previous positions, I really got to know the different foundations and players and municipalities. So that was a big help in getting everything off the ground. And then I would say perseverance was perseverance and passion were the other two pieces that really helped drive the mission forward. It was almost no was not an option. There were people that needed food, and the solution was right in front of us. If there were some hurdles we had to navigate, whether it was figuring out how to incorporate or figuring out how to get our 501c3 status or engaging the right partners, writing the grants. It was really sharing our story. All of those pieces of it were necessary. So we were resilient and brought together an incredible team that's been with us since day one. And that was really how we drove the mission to start. And we started with 3 urban farms, and now 8 years later, we've got 9 farms across South Florida. Since COVID, we now run a large-scale food distribution program where we do a drive-through pantry 2 days a week, feeding 500 families a week. So we've really been able to expand our avenues for connecting people to real food over our existence and evolution.
Right. And throughout the whole program, even in the video clip that was just shared, we kind of learned a little bit about food deserts. And then in doing some of the research of your nonprofit, we understand that a lot of the gardens that you have going there in areas such as Opelika, Miami Gardens, Little Haiti, Liberty City. So how do you go about finding the areas where the needs are to establish these gardens?
Well, Miami has over 326 named food deserts. So there is not a lack of communities that need urban farms, and there's also not a lack of land that's available. So it's really for us, it was about being creative and, again, engaging the right partners. So all the land that we grow on is donated, whether it's from a private owner that heard about us and leases the land to us for $1 a year, or a city or a municipality that has land they access and they wanted to donate. So it looks a little bit different from site to site, but all the land is donated. It helps being from Florida, it helps being from where you know how to navigate and get through communities. But for us, the need is greater than what our gardens are currently serving. So we're only in 9 of the 326 food deserts. So we're still just scratching the surface, and there are a lot more communities that need our services, and Urban Oasis doing incredible work as well. So we're in the fight together.
Yeah. And in the beginning of this conversation, you mentioned, just a little bit about how in conversing with some people, you realized there were mothers that were struggling. I'm not sure how on a regular basis you interact with individuals that live in food deserts. But in creating this program, you were able to build those relationships. Do you have any memorable story of impact, from beginning to, after the vegetable garden has been established, how that has changed their life?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I love community engagement is really in my roots, quite literally. And so it's a big part of what we do is engaging community. So, our answer is not we're coming in and we're going to fix the problem. We're in this together. We are a community. You are not there and we are not here. We are in it together. It's really very much the attitude that we take when we approach a community. But one story that I have that kind of emulates that is in the very beginning, probably about 2-3 years in, we were starting, it was our second Overtown garden, and it was on a really, really rough patch. It was a corner called The Hole. Like really, really a rough area. But that didn't deter us. There were kids that lived in that neighborhood. There were, there was a lot of violence, a lot of drugs, but there were kids that lived there. So if there's a spot and kids, we're going to grow the food. The land was donated by the owner. And so we had volunteers come out. We started planting. And one of the first things we do is knock on doors. Just ask people, what are you interested in growing? We're going to be building a garden this weekend. Did you have time to come out and volunteer? And this one woman opened her door very slightly. It did. And she said, so what are you all doing? I said, we're building a vegetable garden across the street. Is there anything you want us to grow? She said, yeah, can you do collard greens? Absolutely. We grow collards like crazy. I said, would you mind taking this flyer and passing it out to a few of your neighbors? And she said, are you crazy? I don't walk around here. So that just gave me a real sense of, these gardens have a way of bringing communities together and bringing people out and uniting people in a way that food is this great equalizer. And when your hands are in the soil, we're all the same. And the gardens are sort of these like insulated community hubs that are sustainable, that are providing sustenance, and that truly bring people and communities together. So that's one of my favorite, I think, highlights of the community engagement piece and how important that is to the work.
Right. And it does sound very organic. Like you said, you're not just trying to come in and save the day. It seems like it becomes a lifestyle. And I think one interesting thing in particular that I read in doing some of the research was that it's not a situation where these gardens are only available during certain times of the day or certain days
Right.
during the week. If you can kind of maybe talk more about that and why that's so important.
Such great questions, such thoughtful, intentional questions. Yeah, absolutely. So our gardens are operated by incredible residents that live in the neighborhood. So we hire garden managers in each neighborhood. Some of them with us we just had our staff meeting before this. Some of them have been with us for 8 years since the very beginning. But they are truly the heart and soul on how the gardens operate and run and how things are harvested on time and watered and controlled. We don't use any sort of sprays. But the gardens are an open community hub. They are like a park. There's no fencing. There's no rules. It's a community respect that is really developed from building those roots. And so they're all open. They're all hours. I mean, of course, at night we're not there, but during the day it's really an organic process, and people will sort of know green beans are ready. I'm going to bring my basket and come over and pick. Collard greens look good. Nikki is out there, so show folks how to harvest properly, and then organically people just sort of learn how to harvest and when things are ready. So it's truly, again, an organic part of our model to have the gardens be open and available at all times.
Right. And I'm curious, did COVID impact anything at all for you?
Well, interestingly enough, our gardens are outside. We're kind of in this niche industry where everything was already outside. So COVID really only expanded our services. So the gardens, we missed one planting season. So March hit, that was when we would have put a few more spring plants in the ground, but we paused on that. We didn't do volunteers last spring, but now in the fall, we've had several cycles of growing season. So the gardens really didn't get disrupted. But what we did do is we expanded our programming to include pretty large-scale food distribution. So we hold a pull-up pantry 2 days a week, I was sharing. We also did a grocery gift card program. We did just over 2,000 grocery gift cards to furloughed employees. And then we also did a prepared meal delivery program, delivering meals to seniors, veterans, folks that couldn't necessarily get to our drive-through pantry. So we really were able to not just shift, but expand our model and built our team out to be able to meet the COVID food security needs as best as we could.
Okay. And what are your, I guess, for maybe even this year, some of the goals that you have for Health in the Hood?
So, to keep growing for us. Diana knows we used to work together on a national AmeriCorps program. And so replicating this model to be in other communities is certainly in our game plan and our strategic plan. We are also looking at implementing, we just got funding to start our Garden to Grocer program, which is sort of that last piece where we are going to be hiring additional residents to harvest more of our food and get that into the grocery stores in food desert communities. So really building out these local food ecosystems, building more of them, creating this handbook so that it can be done, replicated in communities in different growing climates and across Florida as well.
And if anyone wanted to just come out and maybe give a helping hand, how'd they be able to do that?
Yeah, so the United Way has been amazing in helping us manage our volunteer base. So there is links on the United Way to volunteer every Tuesday and every Thursday at our pull-up pantry. We always need volunteers there. We're also going to be expanding those to Mondays and Wednesdays, so stay tuned for those dates as well. And then we usually have at least 1 to 2 volunteer events per month, and those you can check out at our Instagram, Health in the Hood. Those don't necessarily end up on our website right now, but we do a lot of that promoting on our Instagram account.
Okay. All right. And I don't know if there's anything that I haven't shared that you'd like our viewers to know before we go ahead and open up the floor for some questions.
Just so grateful to be here and so grateful for the space you guys have created to tell the story of urban farming. Like Diana said, it is an untold story, the hidden hungry, the food insecure. We think of poverty as people who can't access food. Really, food insecurity is not being able to access, is not being able to access food. It's not being able to access nutritious food. So telling that story and that distinction is so important, and I'm just grateful for the space.
Right, right. Okay, so I guess until we can get a couple of questions in, just kind of going back to your whole personal journey and interest in getting into this, I've noticed that you also go by, what is it, the Fit Farmer? Is that
I do.
Yes. So this has been something that's been a lifestyle for you for some time, correct?
Yeah, and it's so funny. I'm sharing on both platforms, Health in the Hood and our Fit Farmer platform, and it's it's all I've ever known. My mother was a Jane Fonda exercise queen from the time I can remember sitting in the baby studio watching her exercise with the glass. My father has always been a farmer, so I come by it naturally, and it's definitely been a lifestyle. So I'm really excited to have a platform to share that on with the Fit Farmer, and then also, of course, through my work at Health in the Hood.
Okay, awesome. All right, and
I think I saw a question. There was a good question.
On my end, I'm not. Okay, there it is. All right. What can be done to prevent food deserts from being created?
So, such a good question. I think that people get scared to ask such a big question because it feels like, how can we ever end it? But I think we just have to change the narrative. I think we have become so disconnected from our food sources, like Deanna was saying, from kids to adults. Even we go to the grocery store and we don't really realize that, the Roundup that's been on our soil for all these years is contaminating our foods, has killed our soil. So the food that's growing is less nutrient dense than if we were growing our own food and eating locally. And so being more intentional about our food sources and choices, just as a country, as a people, I think is a great first step. And then education and exposure. So there's no reason why folks in the food desert should not have access to fresh food. There is land, and we are all capable of growing our own food, whether it's on a countertop, a side of the building. If you have landscape, flat land, that's of course our preferred growing method. But just really changing that narrative and the scope of our food being grown by other people and it not being our responsibility, that we have a role to play in our own health.
Right. Okay. All right. So this next one from Jeff. As a child, did you know you wanted to grow up to help people?
That's such a really cool question. I wanted to be a vet first and then an actress. And now I love animals and I do public speaking. So kind of win, but I come from service-minded people. So it's really all I've ever known is that you can make a career out of helping others. And it is just the most fulfilling thing you could ever do. I sleep really well and I work hard, but I get to be so fulfilled every day with what we are able to do and how we're able to serve people. So I guess my plan was always known for me, and I kind of always knew that was my path and followed it. That's a really wonderful question. Thanks, Jeff.
All right. And I will just give it. All right. So what's your favorite part of running your organization?
So many things. Having a team now, having an organization to run for so many years, it was just me and our part-time program managers here and there. So having we just got up of our full staff team meeting, and it was just, it's so powerful to see how many dedicated folks we have on our team. So the best part is our team is the dedicated people who make it happen every day. I write grants and share the stories, but it is the people who are on the ground every day, harvesting, weeding, carrying heavy boxes, unloading truckloads of food and putting in the trunks. Those are the heroes, and they make my heart so full. And then one little quick story. My other favorite thing is whenever a kid picks a vegetable for the first time, it is like the first time every time. They do the same thing, no matter what. They pull it out of the ground, a kale, a radish, or whatever, and immediately they throw it over their head. It's just this innate thing, like, mine, I grew this is mine. So seeing that just innate connection is like magic every single time.
Nice. And I guess that makes them even want to eat their vegetables because they're putting in all that work.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. And then I tell them,
Right.
how much this arugula would cost at Whole Foods? This is expensive food right here.
Exactly.
You grew this. This is expensive. Like, wow.
Yeah. And then our very last question,
Yeah.
any advice for people who would want to start their own community garden in their neighborhood?
Yeah, just get started. Follow any gardener you can find. I mean, there is people who say, I don't have a green thumb. That is what Google is for. You can start to follow Health in the Hood and our YouTube channel. We've got some new gardening videos going up there, so we can share some of our work virtually. But Google, find a spot, engage your community, ask your local churches. Put it this way, nobody gets mad when you ask if they want free collard greens. So finding the right partners, finding access to the land, and then digging in to figure out what kind of soil do you need, what kind of plants are best, and where to get your plants from, using seeds versus seedlings. And of course, Health in the Hood will have all sorts of resources for you there as well. But there's Google, there's Instagram, there's tons of amazing gardeners out there to follow as well to help guide you. But I think it's getting the right partners, land, soil, plants, water, go.
Yeah. All right. And Asha, I just want to say thank you so much for sharing, the information and kind
Of
of
course.
also giving us those personal stories that are, very interesting. And then as you shared before, if, anyone wants to be able to volunteer or, put in some of that work, they can always just, I guess, visit the site and
Yep.
find out some more information. And then we did just get one more that came in. Amazing work. How is this program expanding?
Thank you so much. Yeah, so we are growing every way. So we are more farms is always the goal. So to continue, we've got 9 farms. We just broke ground on our largest property. So continuing to grow larger properties. Again, it's that garden to grocer model where we're kind of closing that last gap, and we are connecting the food that we're growing to the grocers in the neighborhoods that they are in. And then national expansion. So going up the state of Florida until we are able to find a way out of the state. We've got requests from different states all over the country. And so really getting that infrastructure in place, which we are, I would say, inching towards, but sometimes it feels like we're a speeding bullet getting there. And then, of course, it's continuing to expand our food distribution programs from 2 days a week to 4 days a week. Because we've also seen an incredible niche that and a need that needs to be served there. If I'm getting food from the local food banks to people's trunks, we're really serving that need there. So continuing to grow both of those ways. And looking for great new people as well. So we've got lots of new positions as well. So keep us in mind there too.
Okay. Well, all right. Again, it's been great spending that time with you. And we also want to thank our other guests, both Deanna and Ian. Thank you so much for joining us. And to our viewers, thank you. And we hope that you were able to gain some knowledge, maybe learn something you hadn't learned before. And if you have a story pertaining to Miami that you'd like to share, we do ask that you would follow us on Beyond Vizcaya. Or if you just want to be able to keep up with programming like this and stories like this, please follow us on our social media platforms as well. All right. I just want to say thank you, and we'll see you at the next one.